Video, we are going to learn how to deploy a Spring Boot applications into Amazon EKS cluster using Jenkins pipeline. So if you look at this diagram, I do have my Spring Boot application set up in Bitbucket. So that is this one. Okay, this is a Java based application. As you can see here, I do have a Docker file, right? And then we are going to use Jenkins in order to automate the Docker build and everything, right? So Jenkins is going to automate the Docker build, and then we are going to upload the Docker image into Docker Hub. Okay, and then the next step is, we are going to deploy into EKS cluster, right? And then once we deploy the application, right, the Docker application, we should be able to access that, right? So this is what we are going to do in this particular video. Awesome. So let's get started. If you look at the prerequisites, right? So we need to have Amazon EKS cluster up and running. We need to have Jenkins Master up and running, and then we also need to have Jenkins Slave. So this is where we are going to run the build. Okay, and then Jenkins Master should have these plugins: Docker plugin, Docker pipeline plugin, and then Kubernetes deploy plugin. Okay. And then of course we need to have Docker Hub account, okay, because we are going to upload the Docker image into Docker Hub. And finally, we need to have kubectl install. So let's get started with setting up Amazon EKS cluster. So I'm going to click on this link. All right, you see here I have all the steps documented here. If you want to learn more about how to set up EKS cluster, you can definitely watch my video. Okay, it is there in my YouTube channel. All right, so let's quickly go ahead and then create EKS cluster using EKSCTL command. Okay, if you also look at the prerequisites, I have already installed the necessary tools and whatnot. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and then execute this command. So this should create Amazon EKS cluster. Okay, so basically if you see here, we are going to create, this is the cluster name, this is the region, and this is my node group name, and then the node type and whatnot, right? So while this is running, okay, if you look at the other prerequisites, we need to have Jenkins Master and Slave up and running. I do have that up and running over here. So this is the master, this is the slave. So if you go to manage Jenkins, manage plugins available, sorry, I already installed the plugin. So if you go and type Docker, so it should show you the Docker plugin is installed. You see here, Docker pipeline plugin and then Docker plugin. Where is that? Yeah, see here, these two plugins got installed, and then we also already installed Kubernetes continuous deploy plugin as well. Right, let's see, where is that? Yeah, there you go. See here, we also install these plugin as well, right? So from the prerequisite standpoint, we are actually good with that, right? And then of course I also have my Docker Hub account, right? If you go to hub.docker.com, okay, so I have already created my account. I'm going to use that in order to sign in into in order for uploading the Docker image into Docker Hub, right? So we also taken care of that. And then of course I already have kubectl installed on my machine. Awesome, guys. If you see here, our cluster has been set up. All right, so let's quickly execute these command just to see how many nodes are there. Okay, wow, see here it says that 2 nodes are there. Okay, let me do like this way. You see here, so these are 2 worker nodes. Perfect. And then if you want to know, if you want to get a list of namespaces, so this is the command to get that. Okay, so looks like our cluster has been set up, and if we go to AWS console, we should be able to see those 2 worker nodes running. You see here, these 2 are our worker nodes, right? So everything is good. So now what we are going to do, we are going to create a Jenkins pipeline in order to automate the Docker build creation, and then in order to automate uploading Docker image into Docker Hub, right? And finally, we are going to deploy into EKS cluster, right? So that is what we are going to do. Awesome. So let's go to our Jenkins. So this is our Jenkins, right? And what we have to do, we need to create a credential for connecting to Docker Hub, as well as for connecting to Kubernetes cluster as well. Okay, so that is what I have mentioned in the step number 2, right? So what we are going to do, we are going to go ahead and then create the credential for Docker Hub, right, to start with. Okay, and we need to have a ID as Docker Hub, because I'm going to use that ID while creating the Docker image. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and do that. Go to manage Jenkins, manage credential, and click on Jenkins and then add credential, right? We are going to add credential, and then I'm going to say I'm providing my username, right, which is nothing but for Docker Hub. So that is my username, and then I'm also going to go ahead and then provide the password, and then the ID should be Docker Hub, all lowercase. Okay, and the description, I just want to keep it like that, and click on OK. Perfect. So we just created a credential for connecting to Docker Hub, and then the next step is we need to create a credential for connecting to Kubernetes cluster as well. So how to do that? All we have to do is get the kubectl file, right? So if you go ahead and then execute this command, so that should give us the kubectl information, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy like this, right? So copy that and then go to Jenkins, click on add credentials, and yeah, so we need to select this. If you don't see this in the drop down, make sure you install Kubernetes continuous deploy plugin. Okay, so select this one, and then select enter directory, and then I'm going to paste the entire kubectl file output. Okay, and then here I'm going to say K8s, because our pipeline is going to need this ID, right? Okay, that's it, right? And then say OK. Perfect. So we created a credential for Docker Hub, and then we created credential for connecting to Kubernetes cluster, right? Perfect. So everything is good so far. So let me go back to my instruction here. Okay, and then the next step is we have to execute this command. Okay, why? Because this by default the cluster role binding, right, that is going to have system anonymous access. Okay, so whenever you have the default access, you will not be able to deploy anything from Jenkins into Amazon EKS cluster. Okay, so what we need to do is we have to set the cluster role, right? So we need to set the cluster role as a cluster admin, right? So we have to go ahead and then execute this command. Okay, so what this command is going to give, right? So we are going to give that access to that role, right? So let's go ahead and then execute this particular command. Okay, so kubectl create cluster role binding, and then you are saying that cluster system anonymous, and then you are just giving this admin role, right? And then go ahead and then say enter. Okay, perfect. So we are able to do that. Perfect, right? And then the next step is we can go ahead and then create a pipeline. Okay, so what I'm going to do, so let's go ahead and then create a pipeline, right? So go to dashboard and then new item. Okay, so I'm going to say my Docker pipeline job pipeline. Okay, right, go to pipeline. This is where we are going to start writing our pipeline code, right? Okay, all right, so let's start here. Since our pipeline since our application is Java based, so if you look at the pipeline code, we are going to first build the jar file. Okay, of course we are going to check out and then build it, and then we are going to build the Docker image. Okay, and then we are going to push the Docker image into Docker Hub. Finally, we are going to deploy into Kubernetes cluster, right? So this way. Okay, awesome. So let's get started. And if you see, right, I'm going to run the Docker build directly in the Jenkins slave. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. So that's why I have the node block like this. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and then do like this. Okay, and then so we want to first do our first stage, which is checkout, right? Okay, checkout. Okay, and I want to go here and then use the pipeline generator, use the script snippet generator to generate the code. Okay, and this is my repo, right? And this is a public repo, so you don't have to provide credentials, right? Okay, so this is our code for checking out from that particular repo. So we are good. And then the next stage is we are going to go ahead and then do a build. Okay, I'm going to say build. Okay, so we are going to use Maven, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and then use going to go ahead and then build the project this way. Okay, okay, so this is my web app name. You see here, this is my web app name, and then my pom.xml resides inside the web app. Okay, so I need to have this way, and then we are going to use this variable maven3. Okay, maven3 should have been already declared. Let's quickly verify that. Manage Jenkins global tool configuration. Yeah, see here, so maven is already declared here. Perfect. Okay, we go to pipeline. Okay, so everything is good. So why don't we go ahead and then run this build? Okay, let's at least try to make sure we are able to check out the code and then we are able to build the war file. So we are able to check out the code and then build the jar file. Okay, let's go to configure and let's continue building the next stage. The next stage is we have to build the Docker image, right? We have to build the Docker image and then we have to upload the Docker image into a Docker Hub, right? So I'm going to say build Docker image. Okay, and then let's copy the source code. So this is the source code. I will explain you what I'm actually doing. Okay, so if you see here, right, we are using the Docker Hub credential, right, which we just added, and this is the URL, right, for uploading, into Docker Hub. Okay, and then finally, this is how I want to, build my Docker image, right, and then this is the path where the Docker file resides, right. If you see here, the Docker file resides inside my web app, my awesome app. So we are, see here, this Docker file, right. So that's why we are providing that way. Okay, and then this should build the Docker image. Let's quickly go ahead and then check that. Okay, I'm doing a build now. Let's see. Wow, so it was able to log in into Docker Hub, and finally it is in the process of building the Docker image and then pushing the Docker image into Docker Hub. Fantastic. Wow, see here, so we were successfully able to build the Docker image, and then we were also successfully able to upload the Docker image into Docker Hub as well, right? So let me refresh. Wow, see here, so this is the new image, right? So we were able to upload the image into here. Fantastic. Okay, so let's go back to the pipeline. So we are in the final step. So this particular stage is talking about deploying the Docker image into EKS cluster, right? So how are we going to deploy? So for this we need to have this YAML file, right? You see here, springboot -lb.yaml file. This is the YAML file. If you see here, we are referring to the image which we just built, right? So this is for deploying into EKS cluster, right? So this particular code is for the deployment, and then this is for the service, right? So that we can access the service in the browser, right? Fantastic. So let me go back to my pipeline. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and then write this stage, right? So let's go to pipeline, configure, and then we are going to write the next stage, which is nothing but Kubernetes deploy, right? And this is actually, we are leveraging the plugin, right? We are leveraging the Kubernetes continuous deploy plugin. Okay, and this is the path of the YAML file, which I just talked about here, right? Which has all the Kubernetes deployment configuration information, right? Okay, and then this is nothing but this is yeah. So this is the credential for Kubernetes cluster, right? Which we just added, right? And then yeah, we don't have to do this. I mean, this doesn't matter. We are not doing any substitution, so you can leave it like that. Okay, fantastic, right? Okay, so let's say apply and save. Let me go ahead and then run build now. Okay, it is starting the deployment. Wow, see here, Jenkins was able to deploy into Kubernetes cluster, right? So why don't we go ahead and then verify that? So if I go and say get deployments, right? Yeah. If I go ahead and then say deployment, right? We should be able to see this deployment. You see it? So this was the deployment, right? Like 21 seconds ago. And then we can also go ahead and then see the services as well, right? Okay, see here. So this is the service, right? Yeah, so this is the service, right? Because our service type is Angular app service, and you can see that over here, right? You see it? This is coming from the YAML file, right? So that is our service. And then if you want to see the list of pods, right? You see here, it says that our pod is up and running, right? So now we should be able to access our application, right? So obviously for that, we go to service, and then this is the URL we are going to use. Okay, because we are using the type load balancer, we should be able to access the cluster on this URL and this particular port number, right? If you see here, that is the port number we are actually using. You see here, right? That is the port number we are using. Okay, it may take a few seconds for the application to come up, but let me go ahead access this in the browser. Okay, wow, see here, now we are able to access our Spring Boot app, which is deployed inside Kubernetes cluster, right? So you can go ahead and then say DevOps, and then you can say coach. Wow, see here, we are able to see the output, right? So yeah, so that's it, guys. That's how you can deploy Spring Boot applications into Amazon EKS cluster using Jenkins pipeline. Thank you for watching.